Hey there. So you've been invited to play Dead of Winter but have no idea where to start. No need to slow down the game with a rules explanation or to read through the rules booklet. Just watch this quick rules explanation covering everything you'll need to know to jump straight into the game. When you sit down at the table, the game will be set up like this. The central board is called the colony, and the other 6 boards are non-colony locations. The first thing to check is the scenario you'll be playing. Dead of Winter comes with 10 different scenarios, and each has a different group objective. Let the most experienced player choose a scenario and explain the win condition. The game ends if, at the end of a round, this objective is complete, in which case the group has won. However, if the round marker reaches 0 or morale reaches 0, the game ends and the group loses. The scenario card also outlines particular setup instructions, including where the morale and round track markers begin, and how many zombies and helpless survivors are present at the start of the game. In your personal player area, you should have a player aid, which will help you to keep everything organised and remember certain rules. And you should also have a couple of different types of cards. One of these is a secret objective. Read this first. It tells you what you need to do to win. The game will end when the main group objective is completed, and if at that time you have completed all the tasks on your secret objective, you're a winner. Congratulations. However, one player might have a traitor card, which looks like this. If you have this card, you cannot win if the main objective is completed. Instead, you win if you complete all the tasks on your card, one of which is to bring morale down to 0. Of course, this will cause everyone else to lose. There is only one of these cards in any game, which means it is only possible to have 1 or 0 traitors in the game. Once you know your secret objective, you can look at the 4 character cards in front of you. This is your first choice of the game. Which 2 characters will you start with? To make your decision, there are 4 features you should look at. The large number in the top right corner is that character's influence. Characters with a lower influence are always killed before characters with higher influence. There are 2 numbers below the influence. These numbers represent numbers you need to roll on dice to do specific actions. The lower the number, the more often you will be able to do the action. The top action is attacking, and the bottom action is searching. Finally, check each character's special ability. Don't worry, by the time you've finished this video, you will understand all of the mechanics that are referred to in those special abilities. Once you have chosen your 2 characters, find their standees and place each in the empty space on the colony board. You also choose a group leader from the characters, but this choice does not really affect gameplay. Choose the character with the highest influence. The player whose group leader has the highest influence takes the first player token and will start their turn first. You should also see 3 dice in front of you. These are your action dice. Each round you'll roll these, and depending on your roll, you'll be able to take particular actions. The number of dice you roll is equal to the number of characters you currently control plus 1. So since you have 2 characters at the start of the game, you'll start with 3 action dice. Finally, you'll also find 5 item cards in front of you. These are your starting items, and they can be used for a variety of purposes. The game is divided into a number of rounds dictated by the scenario selected. In each round, you will work towards mitigating particular game effects that may occur at the end of the round. You will also attempt to achieve your personal and group win conditions. At the start of each round, you will do the following. First, you'll reveal a crisis. This is done by turning over the top card from the crisis deck. Each crisis card lists a challenge that everyone will face at the end of the round and the bad effect that this will have. In order to avoid this bad effect, all players will need to work together to play item cards of a particular type. The small silhouette image on the crisis card indicates the type of item you need in order to avert the crisis. After revealing the crisis for the round, all players will roll a number of action dice equal to the number of players they control plus 1. and then they will place these in their designated unused action dice section of their player sheet. If you gain or lose characters, this is the time to add or subtract dice to your pool. Once this is done, the first player can take their turn. Each player is allowed to perform as many actions as they wish up to the limitations represented by particular resources. Once a player chooses to end their turn or is unable to take any more actions, play moves clockwise. Once every player has taken their turn, the round ends and we enter the colony phase, during which all the bad effects that you have hopefully mitigated during the actions phase take place. So, what actions can you do on your turn? First, let's talk about the 5 actions that require you to spend dice in order to perform them. The number of times you can do these actions is limited by the number of dice that you have in your unused action dice pool. The first possible action is to attack. You can attack either zombies or other characters. Choose a character you control that is in the same location as a character or zombie you wish to attack. You must then spend an unused action die that shows a number equal to or greater than the character's attack value, which is the number next to the star symbol. If you didn't roll any dice high enough at the start of the round, you're out of luck. You can't attack with that character, though there are ways to increase your die values, as I will describe later. If you are attacking a zombie, it is defeated as soon as you spend your action die. However, you must now face the most heartless game mechanic Dead of Winter can throw at you, the exposure die. This is a 12-sided die that you must roll in a variety of circumstances, including after defeating a zombie. There are 4 possible outcomes from the exposure die. If a blank face is rolled, you are safe. Nothing happens. If a skull is rolled, the character you just used takes 1 damage. Place a wound token on that character's card. If a character ever has 3 or more wounds on it, it dies. I'll explain what to do with dead characters in a moment. If a skull ice crystal is rolled, then you take a frostbite wound. Place a frostbite token on the character card. This works the same way as a normal wound, except if any of your characters have a frostbite wound at the start of your turn, they take another wound, though just a normal one this time. Finally, rolling a tooth means that your character is bitten. The character dies immediately. Then, if there are any other characters in the same location, whether they are controlled by you or another player, the infection spreads. The character in the same location with the lowest influence value is infected. The player controlling that character now has a choice: kill the character and stop the spread, or roll the exposure die. On this roll, if anything other than a blank is rolled, then the character dies and the infection spreads again. This continues until someone rolls a blank or there are no characters left in that location. If the infection spreads in the colony and there are no characters left there aside from helpless survivors, all helpless survivors are immediately killed. The morale track is moved down by 1 for each helpless survivor that dies and for any characters that die. When a character dies, their standee and their card are removed from the game. The player controlling that character loses 1 action die in the next round. The morale track is moved down by 1. If the character had any items equipped, they either go back to the player's hand if the character is in the colony, or they are shuffled into the search deck if the character is at an external location. If a player's last character dies, all of that player's item cards are removed from the game and they draw a new character from the deck, placing that character's standee in the colony. Remember, no matter what you roll on the exposure die, the zombie you targeted is still removed. If you wish to attack another character in your location, you must roll the spent action die. If you roll the victim's attack value or less, place a wound marker on that character and take a random item card from the player who controls that character. You may not attack a character you control with another character you control. You do not have to roll the exposure die if you are attacking another character. The second action that requires an action die is searching. If you have a character in a location outside the colony, You can spend an action die equal to or greater than the character's search value, which is next to the magnifying glass image on the character card. You may then draw and keep a card from the item deck at the location your character is currently at. If you are not happy with the card that you drew, you may make noise in order to continue searching to try and find specific items. To do this, simply announce that you are making noise, add a noise token to the location, and then draw another card from the location's item deck. You must then choose one card to keep. Keep in mind that making noise does not give you extra items. Place the item that you do not want on the bottom of the location's item deck. You can make as much noise as you like, drawing as many cards as you wish, until the location's noise track is filled. This track is reset at the end of the round. No matter how many cards you draw by making noise, you may still only keep one card. For the final 3 actions requiring the spending of an action die, it does not matter what number is on the face of the die. You can spend any number die. The first of these is Barricade. To barricade, spend any unused action die from your unused die pool and place a barricade token on an empty zombie space at a location that you have a character in. If a zombie ever has to enter this space, the barricade will break and will be removed, but it will prevent the zombie from appearing. The second of these actions is Clean Waste. After spending an unused action die, you may remove 3 cards from the waste pile. This is basically the discard pile where you will place certain item cards after you use them. At the end of each round, you lose 1 morale for every 10 cards in the waste pile. The final action requiring an action die is Attracting Zombies. Choose a character that you control. After spending an unused action die, you must move 2 zombies from anywhere in the game to that character's location, placing them on empty entrance spaces. You may also have characters with special abilities that require an action die to perform. If this is the case, a number will be listed in parentheses beside the ability. You must spend an unused action die of this value or greater to use the character's ability. There are a number of other actions that may be done on your turn that are not limited by the number of action dice that you have. These include playing a card. In your hand you have a number of item cards, and you'll find more by searching in different locations. You can play these to the waste pile in order to do the text written on the card. There are 2 exceptions to this: event cards, which are removed from the game once played, and equip cards, which you assign to a character you control when played. Remember, if a character dies at a location outside the colony, any equipped cards are shuffled into that location's item deck. You will only get these cards back if your character dies in the colony. There is no limit on how many cards you may play from your hand, nor is there a hand limit. You may also add a card to the crisis. To do this, secretly select an item card from your hand or equip to a character that you control and place it face down on the crisis contributions pile. If the item card type matches the required type for the crisis, it will help to prevent it. However, if it is any other type, it will make the crisis more difficult to prevent. In this way, it is possible for a player to secretly sabotage the team's attempt to prevent the crisis. The only thing limiting how many cards you can add to the crisis is the number of cards you possess. You may also move characters. To do this, simply move a character from their current location to any other location that has an empty survivor space. After moving, you must roll the exposure die. A bitten result will spread within the location you just moved to. You may only move each character once per round. You may also spend food tokens. Certain item cards will allow you to add food to the supply. You'll need these to feed your survivors at the end of the round. However, they can also be spent during your turn in order to increase any one unused action die you control by 1 for every food token spent. You may do this until all the food tokens are used up if you wish, but if you don't have enough food at the end of the round, you will lose morale. Another action you may perform is Request. To do this, you simply name one or more item cards, and if another player has that card, they may choose to give it to you. If you receive a card in this way, you must play it immediately. Cards collected in this manner may not be added to the crisis contributions. They must be played as item cards. You may request as many cards on your turn as you wish. You may also perform a handoff action, which allows you to move equipped items between characters. You may only hand off an equipped item from a character you control to another character in the same location. This may be done as many times as desired. The final action you may take is to call on a vote to exile. You may only do this once each turn. If you think someone is behaving suspiciously and may be a traitor, name that player and call on a vote to exile them. All players will then simultaneously vote by putting their thumb up for yes or down for no. Ties are broken by whoever has the first player token that round. This is how ties are broken in any kind of vote in Dead of Winter. If the majority of players vote no, there is no effect and play continues as normal. If the majority of players vote yes, the targeted player is exiled. That player immediately draws one exiled secret objective card. This card will change that player's secret objective and will instruct the player to reveal their previous secret objective card if they were not the traitor. Then the exiled player moves any of their characters in the colony location to non-colony locations of their choice. You must roll the exposure die for each of these moves, but they do not count towards the one move each character is allowed per turn. An exiled player cannot add cards to a crisis, they cannot vote, and they cannot use food tokens to add to their die results, though they may spend food cards to do the same thing. In addition, any helpless survivors an exiled player is instructed to add are not added. Any new characters they gain are added to a non-colony location of their choice instead of the colony. No morale is lost if a character an exiled player controls dies, and the exiled player removes item cards from the game when played instead of adding them to the waste pile. If at any point there are two exiled players and neither of them had a betrayal secret objective, the morale immediately drops to 0. Remember, this is a game end condition and will cause you to lose, unless of course you are the traitor. Once the last player has completed all of their actions, we come to the colony phase, which is the last part of the round. The first step is to pay food. For every 2 survivors present in the colony, whether a helpless survivor or a character controlled by a player, 1 food token must be spent from the supply. Round up if you have an odd number of survivors in the colony. If you do not have enough food tokens, do not pay any food tokens. Instead, add a starvation token to the supply, and then move the morale down by 1 for every starvation token currently in the supply. Remember that survivors in non-colony locations do not count towards the food requirements. They are able to forage for their own food. After paying food, check the waste pile. For every 10 cards in this pile, move the morale down by 1. After this, resolve the crisis. To do so, pick up all of the cards that have been added to the crisis contribution that round, shuffle them, and reveal. All cards that are of the correct item type are worth 1. All cards that are of a different type are worth -1. Add and subtract these to get a final value. If this value is equal to the requirement, usually the number of non-exiled players, the crisis is averted and no further action is taken. If you have reached the crisis card's secondary objective, which is usually a value 2 higher than the number of non-exiled players, then move the morale track up by 1. If the final value is lower than the amount required by the card, then you must face the penalty dictated by the card. This might include losing morale, losing items, or adding zombies. After the crisis, you will add more zombies. In non-colony locations, 1 zombie is added per survivor to that location. Zombies are added 1 at a time to the blank space entrance spaces. If there are no blank spaces but there is a barricade, the barricade will be destroyed instead of adding a zombie. If there are no blank spaces and no barricaded spaces, and you must still add a zombie to a location, then you must kill the character with the lowest influence at that location instead of adding the zombie. Extra zombies may be added to locations with noise tokens. Remove each noise token 1 by 1. As you remove it, roll an action die. on a roll of 3 or less, add a zombie to that location and then discard the noise token. For 4 or more, simply discard the noise token. The colony works slightly differently when it comes to adding zombies. You'll add a number of zombies equal to half the survivors, including helpless survivors, present at the colony, rounded up. There are 6 entry points, each with 3 spaces for zombies to be added. Starting with entry point 1, you will add a zombie to each entry point, rotating around until you get back to 1 again. Each time you add a batch of zombies to the colony, you will always start with entry point 1 and rotate around. If you need to add a zombie to an entry point but there are no spaces available there, either remove a barricade instead, or if there are no barricades either, kill a character at the colony. If you must kill a character but there are no characters at the colony, you must kill all helpless survivors present at the colony. If a location gets overrun by zombies but there are no characters present, then there is no effect. At this point, if the game is not over from all the previous effects, you can check the main objective. If this has now been completed, the game is over. Any player who has fulfilled the requirements of their secret objective at this stage has won the game. If the main objective has not yet been completed, move the round track marker down by 1. If this would bring it to 0, the game is over and everyone has lost. If not, the first player marker is passed to the right, anti-clockwise, and this means that the player who went last in the previous round goes first in the next round, giving them 2 turns in a row separated by the colony phase. Once this is done, a new round begins. Reveal the next crisis and roll your action dice. That is the basic structure of a round of Dead of Winter. However, there is one final complication, which comes in the form of this deck of Crossroads cards. These cards add little story moments that may be triggered during a player's turn. Every time a player starts their turn, the player to their right draws the top card of the Crisis deck. At the top is a condition in italics. If this condition is met at any point during the player's turn, the Crossroads card takes effect. The player who drew the card reads out all of the text on the card, which will offer a little bit of story, and the text of the card applies to the player who is taking their turn. Most Crossroads cards then have 2 options. Read out all of the text of both options. Unless the Crossroad card instructs otherwise, the player whose turn it is chooses which option is carried out. Once the Crossroads card has been resolved, it is removed from the game. Do not draw another Crossroads card until the next player starts their turn. Only 1 Crossroads card is drawn for each player during a round. If the Crossroads card is triggered by the player performing a specific action, completely resolve that action before reading the Crossroads card. For instance, a card triggered by the player moving a character will be read out after the player has moved the character and rolled the exposure die for that character. If a card doesn't trigger before the end of a player's turn, place that card at the bottom of the deck. When the next player's turn starts, the player to their right, who will have just finished their turn, draws the next Crossroads card. Sometimes you will draw a Crossroads card that cannot possibly trigger. If this is the case, do not give any indication of this fact. Act as though it could trigger. You may not hint at what the trigger requirements of a Crossroads card is for any reason. Both Crossroads cards and item cards may add new characters to the game. A player who receives a new character for whatever reason draws a character card and takes a corresponding standee, placing the standee on an empty space in the colony if they are not exiled, or in a non-colony location if they are exiled. If there are no empty spaces available, that card or option cannot be played. That is everything you need to know in order to jump into a game of Dead of Winter. I haven't provided details of what each card does, simply read the card's text to figure out its purpose. If any card seems to contradict the rules I have outlined in this video, the card takes precedence. One important point to remember as you play Dead of Winter is that much of the enjoyment comes from the suspicion and uncertainty the possibility of a traitor brings. Though it is easy to cooperate with the other players and complete the group objective while ignoring your secret objectives, if you do so, you will not win. You only win if you complete all of your secret objectives. Doing so may require you to act suspiciously occasionally. This is good and will make the game more exciting for everyone. You're not allowed to reveal your secret objective card to any other player for any reason. You may discuss your secret objective, including lying about it. However, I recommend that games with newer players should ban talking about secret objectives in detail, as this will unfairly advantage those with more experience of the game and greater knowledge about the variety of secret objectives that are possible. The final rule to mention is, of course, to have a blast while you're playing Dead of Winter. Enjoy yourself.